Good night and welcome back to your favorite live sports show. Although Payton has a live one now, so he may have something to say about that. But it is indeed hashtag this just in, and we are here for NBA playoffs. If you're not new to this channel, y'all know my guests already, but I'll introduce them all the same. That is Dwayne Marcus of the GOAT Talk with Marcus podcast. And indeed, y'all know Payton Doyle from the Payton Doyle Show. Guys, how are you tonight?
Get into the big show today.
I mean, aside from Nikola Jokic becoming the most undeserving back-to-back MVP in the history of the league, I'm doing just fine, dude.
Debbie Downer as usual. So thank you for that plug, Dwayne, because indeed, let us congratulate Nikola Jokic for winning the NBA MVP for the second successive year, as well as my own Phoenix Suns head coach, Monty Williams, for justly winning the NBA Coach of the Year award. Before we get into it, guys, a little trivia just to test your knowledge of basketball. There have been 15 multi-MVP winners, 13 of which won at least successive MVP awards. Do you know the two who have won multiple NBA awards or MVP awards, but did not win them successively?
It's not ringing a bell.
Okay, well, we have a show to go on, so I will help you all here. Bob Pettit and none other than Carl the Mailman Malone. That's right, Bob Pettit and Carl Malone. So the next time y'all are trivia, you can answer with those answers. But guys, we're not here to talk about the past. We're here to talk about another former MVP, actually, and that is James Harden, who finally broke out of his playoff slump with a 31-point performance, leading the Philadelphia 76ers to tying the series against the Miami Heat at 2 games apiece. But Payton Doyle, is that enough to warrant Philadelphia giving James Harden a new max contract?
Not yet. And the reason why isn't because, I mean, listen, he had a great game and he certainly closed the game out in the fourth quarter, scoring 16 in the fourth, which is something that we've been waiting for him to do all this playoffs, because I believe up until that, in this series, he had like a combined 10 total points scored in the second half, which is terrible. And the reason why I say no is because you look at the reaction of people across social media, Twitter, the fans, the people that are watching. Now, I don't know if the managers and the players are feeling the same thing, but the reaction was Harden turned back the clock last night. So the consensus around the league is that you're washed, is what people are telling you. And I'm not giving a max deal to someone who people consider to be washed. Now, if Harden has, a bunch more games like that this playoffs and Philly gets to the Eastern Conference Finals and even beyond, and Harden plays well, okay, then yeah, maybe you can talk about an extension. But the fact of the matter is right now people are saying Harden's nothing more than just a facilitator for the offense, and he's honestly not even doing it that efficiently. I believe he's averaging over 5 turnovers a game on only 7 assists per game this series. So it's not like he's an elite facilitator, and the consensus is that he's washed. I'm not giving someone a max deal who doesn't score as well as he used to and isn't an elite facilitator and is considered to be washed.
So, Dwayne Marcus, then what should Philly do with James Harden? And for those of you that don't know, he has yet to opt into his final year of his Supermax deal, which would pay him $47.4 million, if I'm correct. So, Dwayne, what does Philly do with James Harden?
James Harden's still a max player. I don't know. We do this all the time. We're very quick to overreact. I mean, this is nothing new from James Harden. James Harden hasn't averaged more than 20 shot attempts a game since he left Houston. This has been the new normal for James Harden for a very long time. And I know we're not grieving, but let's get past the denial stage of. It was fantastic to see James Harden drop 31 points, specifically 16 in the fourth quarter against Miami, because they really needed that, right? That was beautiful, and that game was fantastic, right? James Harden at this point in his career is a facilitator, and to pay hasn't done it the most efficiently in this series because he's been going up against the team that was ranked, the only team in the NBA that had been ranked top 5 in defense from game 1 to game 82. Like, the Heat are still a solid defensive team. So that plays a factor into it as well. James Harden is fine. James Harden will likely win a championship this season, averaging 22 and 10 for the Philadelphia 76ers, which is what he's been doing since about the time he got there. Like, and it's not that James Harden is washed. It's that James Harden is in a new role in his life. Peyton, Justin, Neil, people at home. James Harden has 0 championships. He has 1 Western Conference Finals appearance. He has 0 NBA Finals appearances. Like, okay, shooting the ball 25 times, 30 times a night and dropping 45 points every other night looks great, but he hasn't won a championship playing that way. So it is insane for us to think that he's going to continue to play that way and that's going to result in a championship. That's not how it works. James Harden's style of play when he was in Houston did not win him a championship. He has been forced now to change his style of play, starting when with him he's in Brooklyn, now that he's in Philadelphia. He can win a championship playing this way. He's still a max player playing this way. Being a facilitator isn't dirty. There's nothing wrong with being a facilitator. This is the new normal for James Harden. James Harden's going to continue to average around 14 to 15 shots a game. He's going to continue to average about 22 to 24 points a game. He's going to continue to average close to double-digit assists for the rest of his career until he does eventually get to that point of being washed. But we throw this word washed around like way too quickly. James Harden's not washed. He's fine. I'm sure at some point he will accept that final option in his supermax contract, and if he doesn't, oh well. But he's not a max player because he's not putting on a show every night. This is just the new normal for James Harden.
So before I go on, then Dwayne, I am getting from you that Philly should give him that supermax extension, and to clarify, that supermax extension would be a 4-year, $223 million contract, where in the last year of that contract would pay James Harden at age 36, 37, $61 million a year. That's what you're saying.
James Harden on the Philadelphia 76ers, by trading for James Harden, has extended their championship window a lot farther than I think anyone can imagine, given what we were looking at the last time that the Philadelphia 76ers were close to winning a championship, which was in 2019. Yeah, pay him. I mean, LeBron James isn't making that much money, right? He's not close to making that much money as far as what his NBA contract is at this point at the age of 37 years old. But James Harden is still a guy in an Eastern Conference. The Philadelphia 76ers without James Harden aren't going to win a championship because you have the Bucks that you continuously try to convince me are just this dynamic, dominant team, and they're not. But it's fine. Like, there's the Bucks. Whatever. There's the Bucks. There is, regardless of the anomaly that I'm going to call this season, the Nets are still the Nets. The Celtics are getting better. The Heat are still the Heat without true superstar potential. That's just in the Eastern Conference. We haven't acknowledged the fact that the Warriors are back, if you want to say they ever left. Like, the Clippers will be back next season with KG, like with PG and Kawhi. Like, you're not going to make a run to the finals without a second guy on that team to go alongside Joel Embiid. There's no one else on that. Like, Tyrese Maxey has been playing great and was more deserving of most improved than Ja Morant. Tobias Harris has been being Tobias Harris, even though he hasn't been playing that great offensively. Matisse Thybulle is still their best on-ball defender. Like, and despite the refusal to make late game adjustments by Doc Rivers, the Philadelphia 76ers are still one of the more elite teams in the NBA, and you need a second guy in today's NBA to make a run. You don't need the big three that you needed back in 2012 and 2013 and 2014, but you do still need to have at least a dynamic duo. And the Philadelphia 76ers are not going to win a championship if they don't have someone to take the pressure off of Joel Embiid, which is the reason why people didn't like Ben Simmons being in Philadelphia, because he failed at doing the one job he had, which is take the pressure off of Joel Embiid. So yeah, pay him. If it results in a championship, who cares how much he ends up making? It's you play this game to win championships. And if the next 4 years the Sixers win a championship, no one's going to care that they're paying James Harden $61 million a year if it results in multiple championship appearances and at least one championship. I for a team that's been a dumpster franchise for a considerable part of modern history, I don't think anyone would care that James Harden's getting paid that much money if they get a championship
So
out of it.
before I hop in here, Payton, you said don't pay him the max contract, but what should Philadelphia do?
On second thought, they have to find a way to keep him. Because Marcus is exactly right. I'm not comfortable. Like, okay, let's say Harden has this big game right now and then has 2 terrible games and they lose in 6, right, to Miami. Then you have to find a way to, like, tell him, negotiate a deal that's not the max deal. They're not paying him that much money for that amount of time, or find a way to trade him and try to get better assets. Because clearly then if that crumbles and you fail to beat Miami, which I think they absolutely should beat Miami. I think they're the better basketball team overall. We'll get into that later. Yeah. But if they lose to Miami, then either trade Harden or find a way to get him at a better price. But if they go to the Eastern Conference Finals and they go to the finals, like I said earlier, then the conversation changes. And then I think they should try to find a way to do anything they can to keep Harden, because clearly they are a contending team with Harden. But if you lose to Miami, you're not a contending team.
So,
just real quick, but the only reason they would lose, I don't think they will, but the only reason they would possibly lose to Miami is because they didn't have Joel Embiid for the first 2 games, and they were in a 2-0 hole. Like, if Joel Embiid doesn't miss the first 2 games of this series, we're probably not talking about a potential 7-game series between these 2 teams. And that's not really James Harden's fault, I don't think, if they do lose this series, despite the fact that he hasn't played the way we're accustomed to him playing. I don't think that this season isn't like the Ben Simmons thing, where like Ben Simmons just completely folded and looked terrible. James Harden hasn't looked terrible through the first 2 games and 3 games of this series. He just hasn't looked what we're used to him, and so because of that, we think, oh, he doesn't have that much left in the tank, which is fine. I just feel like we're being too harsh on James Harden.
But Marcus, isn't that why okay, I get it. Embiid was out the first 2 games, but that's why you bring in a guy like Harden, is that if Embiid is hurt, which he seems to get hurt somewhat frequently, sadly, you can win 2 games in Miami, or at least 1, right? That if you're paying that guy, if you're paying someone over almost $250 million for the next 4 years, you want him to be able to step in and not go 1 for 5 from the field in the second half in game 2 and only score 2 points in the second half. You need him to at least close out the game. Like, you can't, you need to be, he needs to step up. James Harden needs to step up. That's why you have him.
And that's the thing, right? Part of it is, I will say James Harden has some brand of leverage, because Philadelphia gave up Ben Simmons. Well, he wasn't playing anyway, but they traded Ben Simmons, Steph Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. One, I think, is a top 8 lottery protected. So you would figure you gave up all that, and you really just don't want James Harden to walk out through the door. That being said, right, guys, like, as you said, I don't know I want to pay a Supermax guy or Supermax dollars for the guy that we've seen in the playoffs so far. And I find it interesting, though, by the way, that James Harden did not opt into that final $47.4 million. And the reason why there's a line of thought, rumors floating about there that Zach Dress Harden shot that down. And the rumor has it that James did not opt into the final year of the contract. He plans to become a free agent, sign for less than the max. They trade or get someone to take Tobias Harris's salary so they can open up a 3rd max salary slot. Again, that'll be pretty ingenious if that happens. But James Harden has reportedly shot that down and said, although he has missed the deadline to sign into his opt-in or to opt into his contract, he does plan to opt into the final year of that contract in the offseason. So then he will become a free agent in the 2022 at the end of the 2022-2023 season. That being said, I am not sure that you still give him a Supermax after that. And the reason being, if he asks for a Supermax after that 2022-2023 season, guess who else also has a contract lining up at that same thing? Joel Embiid's 4-year, $196 million contract kicks in at the very same time that you're going to have to sign him. Good luck, guys, trying to sign somebody else or to fix your roster with two guys basically taking up 90% of your cap. But I've gone about this roundabout way, gentlemen. The reality of the situation is, right, relationships drive sports. And James Harden wanted to get to Philadelphia from the get-go. And the reason being, obviously, because of Daryl Morey and his ties with Daryl Morey. I think the relationship between the two is such that Daryl Morey can convince him to take way less than the supermax. Furthermore, I think they're going to take less. He's going to take less than the max. So, as you know, because James Harden knows he's no longer that player. And I'm going to get into that very shortly because that's part of the reason he left Houston. I have it on good authority that he said he no longer wants to be the guy to carry a franchise. And then he got into a little tiff with Kyrie Irving, who called him wash during his time in Brooklyn, apparently. So here's where I segue into the next part, guys, and I'm going to start you doing, Marcus. Given that the series is now tied to all, Joel Embiid seems to be back for the remainder of the series, and we saw James Harden of Houston old. Are the Sixers now favorites to win this series?
Yeah, they were favored. They would have been favored to win. You could make a legitimate argument that this series would be over if Joel Embiid didn't miss the first two games of the series. Like that is you can make a legitimate argument that the Miami Heat would have been swept, and it would have been, if my memory serves me correct, the first time that a one seed was swept in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference anyway, since LeBron did it to the Toronto Raptors a couple years ago. Like, the Heat would have been swept off the floor because, as I have continuously tried to explain to you, Mr. Justin Marvel, and for some reason it's not getting through your thick head, there is no answer for Joel Embiid in the NBA, which is why he should have been the MVP of the season. Look, Joel Embiid has owned, quite frankly, the Miami Heat through over the last 2, maybe 3 years of his career. Like, Bam's not stopping Joel Embiid. Jimmy Butler's not stopping Joel Embiid. I don't care who you throw at Joel Embiid. There is no stopping Joel Embiid in the Eastern Conference. There is the only guy that for some reason seems to scare Joel Embiid is Giannis Antetokounmpo. And that's fine. But the Heat don't have Giannis. Okay. We can have that argument another day because I still don't think he is, but that's fine. The Sixers would have swept the Heat if the Sixers had Joel Embiid in Game 1 and had him in Game 2. I mean, you saw Joel Embiid come back in Game 3. He only had 18 points, and the Sixers won that game quite handily. You could make an argument, too, that the Sixers would have won Game 1 if it weren't for Doc Rivers refusing to make adjustments in the second half and then also playing DeAndre Jordan so many minutes. Like, the DeAndre Jordan is the Sixers, I think, are plus 24 when DeAndre Jordan's off the floor and minus 23 when he's on the floor. That's a 47-point swing. In the playoffs, that means a lot. So the Sixers are going to win this series. They're going to go on to the Eastern Conference Finals, and whether it is the Bucks or the Celtics, they'll get the job done. They'll go to the finals. They'll probably see your Suns, and they'll beat them too. Like, I don't know how many times I need to say this to you, Justin, for you to get it. I've been saying this really since the beginning of the season, really all the way since the beginning of last season. There is no stopping Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. Like, because Joel Embiid at his best, I think, Joel Embiid at his best is a bigger threat and is more dominant overall in the game of basketball than Giannis Antetokounmpo, at least offensively. It's already talking offensively. So, like, the Sixers are fine. They're going to go back to Miami. They'll probably win that game. They'll come back home. They'll win that game, and then they'll be fine. The Bucks and the Celtics are likely going to go to 7, so Joel Embiid can get the rest of his face fixed up and all that stuff, and his thumb will get some more rest, and then he'll smack those guys. Like, why do you bring me on this show to so I can continuously tell you that the Sixers are going to the finals? I don't know.
I thought it brought Dwayne Marcus on the show and not Germ. Someone's been
I've been saying this. I've been saying this since mid-season. I've been saying that the Sixers are going to the finals from the moment they made the trade for James Harden. I don't know why that's such a difficult concept for people to grasp. It seems as easy as ABC and 1, 2, 3, but apparently it's not. That's fine. If I have to educate the masses, I will do that. I'll do that.
So transitioning away from Germ's clone, apparently, Payton Doyle Are the Sixers no favorite to win this series against Miami?
I think they definitely are. After last night's game, I had some very choice words about the Miami Heat on Twitter.
I saw them on Twitter.
Saying,
I was up watching.
Yep.
We read.
Listen, I'm shocked. The only thing that I'm surprised about this series is how the Miami Heat are more than just a play-in team. I don't know how. I mean, all credit to Eric Spoelstra. All credit to Eric Spoelstra because he's the only reason why. I'm answering my own question. He is the only reason why the Miami Heat were the 1 seed in the East and they weren't a play-in team to a team that completely missed the playoffs. If you look at that team from top to bottom, there is nothing good about them other than the way that Eric Spoelstra plays matchups with the players in which he is given. Kyle Lowry is a shell of his former self. Max Strus is not good. PJ Tucker shouldn't be in an NBA starting lineup. The only thing they have going for them is Bam's defense and Jimmy Butler's heart. And that's just not going to get it done against a team that is as talented as Philly and playing as well as Philly is right now, especially with Embiid on the floor. So I think Philly takes it in 6, and I'm praying that they take it in 6 because I don't want to be forced to have to watch another series of this boring, sleepy Miami Heat culture kind of basketball. So give me Sixers in 7, please. Please, for the basketball world, I'm asking for it.
Real quick, and just at some point, can we get the can we get the date, like the on this date of when I came on this show and gave that exact same rant about the Bucks last year? I feel like that was around the same time of this show, and that's just I've never heard some. That's interesting. Wow, you really ripped the Heat a new one there, buddy. I didn't.
Listen, and all my buddies are going to be mad at me. If they're watching this right now, I'm sorry because I'm living in South Florida. All my friends are Heat fans. But I can't sit there and say that they're like head and shoulders above any other team in the East.
Well, like, they play old school basketball.
Coaching.
Stuff that Justin grew up on. That garbage. Yeah. Disgusting. Look, we like running up and down the floor. We play above the rim in 2022. Not this defensive 22-second shot clock nonsense they got going down on there in my
yeah. Opinion. And then look at what the backcourt is terrible. I mean, they combined for 12 points yesterday, and I believe Philly with Tyrese Maxey and Harden combined for 49, if I'm not mistaken. So they're getting outscored there, and then also Embiid is in the backcourt, and he's the best player on the court overall. So their backcourt's outnumbered and their frontcourt's outnumbered on the floor. So I don't see how Miami's going to take on Philly now that Embiid is back.
I'll say this, guys. It depends for me what James Harden we get. I will say clearly the momentum is all with Philadelphia right now. I am not going to go as far as y'all guys and say it in 6 because I cannot see Philadelphia winning 4 straight games against its Miami Heat team. I just can't see that happening. Because that's what it will be.
The series would be the series should be 3-1 right now.
Yeah, but you're seeing that this team is going to win 4 straight games with an injured Joel Embiid. And here's really my problem with going Philadelphia in 6. Everything has pointed towards this in the last 2 playoffs that James Harden is no longer the James Harden that we know. Last night, granted, he went off for 31 points. But to Payton's point, this is still not the James Harden that Brooklyn and then Philadelphia traded for because most of that 61 points came from behind the arc. So this is the guy who had to hit 6 of his 10 threes for him to make sure to get 31 points. This is not a guy blowing past anyone and finishing at the rim or blowing past anyone and, throwing those alley-oops, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason why I'm getting to that particular point, James Harden is, for the last 2 seasons in the playoffs, in Brooklyn and in Philadelphia, has shot 36% from behind the arc. That is who James Harden is. I don't know that James Harden in any game going forward is going to hit 6 or 10 from behind the arc again. Because he sure well ain't blowing past anybody. Those days are gone. Harden is not tricking anybody. And that's why his step back has not been effective because the option of somebody blowing past you is just not there. That's how a step back works because you have the threat of somebody flying past you. It depends on which James Harden you get. And the numbers in Brooklyn, his playoff average is just 20. Here is below 20. He's shooting 40% from the field. The numbers tell me we are not going to see this James Harden for the rest of the playoffs. Can I bank on Joel Embiid with a fractured orbital bone and a hurt left thumb on his shooting hand, or a hurt thumb on his shooting hand, to carry them the rest of the way? I don't know. I'm with you all. Huh? I am not a fan of Miami's offense, but I am a hell of a fan of their defense. And Bam Adebayo is not the same player when Joel Embiid is on the floor. We saw that. Like games 1 and 2, Bam was dominating the series. The moment that Joel Embiid comes back is different. I'm going to have to lean towards Miami because numbers tell me, Joel, that this is the best of James Harden. We're not going to see that again. And I cannot bank on an injured Joel Embiid. Go ahead, Dwayne. I know you want to hop in here.
Why do we keep acting like the Sixers didn't know what they were getting themselves into? The Nets didn't get the James Harden they thought they were going to get. Fine. The Sixers are getting everything that they thought they were getting. The Sixers traded for the guy that they like. Everything we saw out of James Harden in Brooklyn is what we're seeing in Philadelphia. The only difference is he was
shooting 47% for the field in the regular season in Brooklyn, and no, that's nowhere near right now. But go ahead.
Okay. So his shooting percentage has dropped. He wasn't blowing by people in Brooklyn. He's not blowing by people now. He wasn't dribbling the ball for 20 seconds in the 24-second shot clock and then heaving up a bad shot. He's not doing that now. So this thing where we're talking about blow by rates and not using the step back, like all of that stuff is what we were seeing in Brooklyn. And yeah, he didn't have the best playoff series last season in Brooklyn. That's because he was hurt for most of the playoffs last season in Brooklyn. So I don't want to hear that either. This James Harden being a guy that's averaging 22 and 12 or 25 and 13, that's not bad basketball. That is the epitome of what you expect from a basketball team whose best player is a big man. Like you want a guy that can facilitate the rest of the offense and still feed him in the post. And that's what the Sixers are doing. Like and I feel like we're putting too much of this on James Harden. Like James Harden is doing everything that we at least thought he was going to do in Philly. This is starting a little bit. We're starting to get into that Russell Westbrook with the Lakers territory. Where like we thought Russ would go to the Lakers and be the guy that he was in OKC. Like this is the exact same thing. Well, that's a little bit different because Russell Westbrook, the Lakers was never going to work. But point is, the old James Harden is gone. Will James Harden go off for 35, 40 points every now and then? Sure. Will the Sixers love to see that? Absolutely. But that's not what this team is anymore. This is a team that has a very solid, very top-heavy starting lineup. Joel Embiid's the number one option. James Harden's the second option. Tyrese Maxey's the third option. Tobias Harris the fourth option. That is the formula that leads this Sixers team to success. It's what they had when Jimmy Butler was there. This is how they found their most recent deep playoff run success. That's not going to change. And James Harden not being able to blow by people and his blow by rate having dropped 40%, whatever. That is the most random stat, by the way. Like whatever that doesn't affect, to me anyway, that does not affect the Sixers moving forward as far as winning a championship, because Joel Embiid's probably not going to be that dominant the rest of the series. But he didn't dominate in Game 3. He didn't dominate in Game 4. And they won both of those games. The Sixers are going to win one of these next two games on the road in Miami because Bam Adebayo looks terrible against Joel Embiid. And that's all that matters. And the Heat are not – this isn't the Hawks. The Heat aren't going to win a basketball game in this series off of just Jimmy Butler. It's not going to happen. The Heat are going to, whether you want to say 6 or 7, the Heat are going home after this series is over, and we won't see them again until 6-7 months down the line.
Well, go ahead, Payton. Sorry.
I 100% agree. Like I have the Sixers winning, like I said earlier, but I see what both of you guys are saying. I wouldn't have a problem. Harden is not himself. He's not the same as he used to be. But I just don't feel like he is that great facilitator that he is trying to be yet. Maybe he will later on. But I mean, I get what you said, Marcus, where if Harden averaging 20 and 15 is fine. The problem is that he's not really doing that. I believe he's only averaging like 7 assists per game this series, at least in specific. And another thing is, though, yes, Justin, you want to call Harden washed and say that that's why you don't believe in him to help the Sixers close out this series, but you tell me who's more washed at this point in their career, James Harden or Kyle Lowry?
Yeah, well, one man is making almost like $48 million and the other man is Kyle Lowry. So, but yes, like Kyle Lowry is not that guy. But reality is Miami don't want him, nor do they need him to be the Kyle Lowry of old. But I get your point.
Mm-hmm.
Who else looks not as good and are also going home, but for a different reason, are my Phoenix Suns, who have squandered a 2-0 or 2-0 lead in this series against Dallas Mavericks and are now going back home tight. So, Payton, I'll start with you this time. Are the Suns in danger of losing this series?
Absolutely. This might be the last 2 games of the series, might be the worst 2 games that I've seen the Phoenix Suns play since Monty Williams became the head coach. This has been, I mean, they've been all kinds of out of sorts. Defensively, offensively, it just doesn't look right. And part of that is because, well, I mean, we're going to get into it later, but Chris Paul looks just frazzled out there. He doesn't look like Chris Paul. The game doesn't look like it's slow and in control when Chris Paul it has the ball in his hands. And also another player who I'm disappointed with in the Suns is DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton is looking for a max deal, and he is not playing like he's deserving of it because right now the Mavs don't really have a big to kind of be physical with DeAndre Ayton down low, and DeAndre Ayton is not taking over this series like he probably should be when his matchup is very favorable down low. So with that being said, the Suns need to step up. They've been all kinds of out of sorts. They need to figure out whatever is wrong. They need to identify it quickly because if you go and lose 3 in a row to Luka and the Mavs, it's going to be tough to dig yourself out.
Watch the show enough because you would know I'm not surprised at DeAndre Ayton's lack of contribution in this series, but that is another show for another time.
He's very athletic and he's big and strong, but he doesn't play like it. He's also terrible at grabbing rebounds. I don't understand it. Like, sure, he averages like a good amount per game. I believe he's in like the almost 10 range, but he should be in the 12 to 13 with his build and athleticism, and he's not. And part of that is just physical effort and heart, and it's disappointing to see because he has all the tools, but I just don't feel like he's playing hard enough.
I see you trying to goad me into another DeAndre Ayton segment, but I'm going to lay it off because I've been told I've been too harsh on the kid. So I'll lay that off. Same question, Dwayne. Are the Suns in trouble?
Yeah, why do we keep disrespecting Luka Doncic like he's not one of the greatest playoff performers we've ever seen? Like, I know he's young, and I know he's got a lot more time left in his career, but like he is his points per game, assists per game, rebounds per game, 3-point percentage, like with a minimum of 15 career starts. Like, he's in the top 10 of all of it, and he's in the top 5 or 3 in some of those things. Like, Luka Doncic is a superstar. And what the Mavericks have realized after games 3 and 4 is that Luka Doncic dropping 30 points a game is not a recipe for success. Luka Doncic dropping 25 points a game with Jalen Brunson dropping 17 and Dorian Finney-Smith dropping 24 and so on and so forth. That is a recipe for success. The other day, and this is a shameless plug, but I don't care. The other day, I had Blaine Spencer on my show. We were talking about the Dallas Mavericks having gotten past the Utah Jazz. And I mentioned that this Dallas Mavericks team has a similar roster construction to the Dallas Mavericks team we saw just 11 years ago win probably the most unlikeliest of NBA championships in the last 10, 15 years. This roster is built exactly the same. And one of the guys that was on that team, just so happens to be Jason Kidd. And who's Jason Kidd? The head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. Like, this is a Mavericks basketball team that has mastered the art of team basketball before our eyes over the course of this playoff run to this point. And The Dallas Mavericks now find themselves in what I think is a favorable position because, to Payton's point, Chris Paul has looked terrible for the last 2 games and has not at all been able to support my claim that he's the best player on the Suns, but it's fine. And also has not looked that great, but like Justin, not at all surprised about that at all. The Dallas Mavericks, I think, if they win Game 5, I don't see them losing Game 6 at home. I do not see the Mavericks just falling apart and or the Suns finally figuring it out in Game 6. So I'm going to say this, and I mean it wholeheartedly, and Justin, kick me off the show if you feel so inclined. I don't care. If the Suns lose Game 5, they're not winning this series. And that's not like a crazy thing to say, obviously, because it's Game 5. But like, seriously, if they don't win Game 5, they're not winning another game of this series. They're not going back to Dallas and getting a win. That's not happening. The Luka Doncic has been superb. He has been phenomenal since this series started, but really since the playoffs started, and he missed the first 2 or 3 games of his opening round series. Like, the Dallas Mavericks, I think, have been slept on a little bit too much. I know we were talking about earlier about how you need to have a dynamic duo, and I do still think that the Mavericks are going to need that if they want to win a championship. But to get into the Western Conference Finals, all they need is a win in Game 5, and they'll be there. The Suns are in hot water, very hot water.
The thing is, right, I went on a good friend of mine, his show, TV on Basketball, and if you're not subscribed or never watched, it is a good watch. So please subscribe. TV on Basketball, very knowledgeable Toronto fan. And he asked me for prediction for the series, and I told him Suns in 7. And he was like, "But why 7?" And I told him the reality of the situation is twofold. Luka Doncic is the best player in the series. I don't think that's up for debate. And I told him part of the problem is Monty Williams can sometimes take a while to adjust or not adjust at all. And my biggest fear has come to light. And I told him the Dallas Mavericks have 2 players that can headhunt. And the biggest concern I had was them targeting DeAndre Ayton on defense. That was my biggest concern. Like, they're going to run a bunch of pick and rolls at DeAndre Ayton, draw him away from the paint on Luka. And he's either going to respect Luka too much and Luka's just going to hit that 3. Luka can blow past, create for somebody else to drain a 3. Or when he gets by DeAndre, because the team is so small, there is absolutely no rim protection. This isn't Milwaukee, who's starting 3 7-footers. Like, this is a very small team. That was my biggest fear. Jason Kidd didn't exactly exploit that matchup in the first 2 games. And now you're seeing it come to light. And the other one is that, and it took a while to do this, I figured they were going to start to headhunt Chris Paul, and we'll get into that in the next segment, which is what led to the Game 4 collapse. Yeah, Phoenix is in danger. What I will say is that the Suns at least have 2 of the next 3 games at home if it goes to Game 7. And they are still an elite road team. They were the best. I think they won more road games than anyone actually had home wins this season. I still think Phoenix pulls this out in 7, like I said in my prediction, simply because what's helped Dallas, I've always said, role players typically play well at home. And we saw that Games 3 and Games 4 with the likes of first Jalen Brunson waking up from his slumber, then Maxi Kleber and Dorian Finney-Smith, and there's one person I am missing, and Bertans. They went off in the Games 3 and Games 4. I do not expect them to continue that trend in Game 5. I would not expect Chris Paul to continually look this bad, especially when he goes home. Then there's the incident again with his family in the stands. I don't know how much that had to play with him looking bad down the stretch of that game. I'll get into the Chris Paul situation, and I think there's one person who's going to come to life, and that is Mikal Bridges. I don't have that much faith in DeAndre Ayton, but again, that's another conversation for another time. Other than to see Payton's absolutely correct, my issue from the time we've drafted the kid, he has the physical tools. He is athletic, he jumps high, he's big, he's strong. He does not put those tools into the greatest impact or effect at all. No matter, even if you switch him in a smaller defender, he's going to settle for a fadeaway jumper, a pull-up jumper, or that little hook shot. He doesn't drop his elbow or make defenders feel him. And that is part of the problem with DeAndre Ayton. He does not physically impose defenders. But as I said, I expect Mikal Bridges to be good in Game 5. I don't expect Dallas's role players to be good on the road. And to the Chris Paul situation now, guys, we saw how bad Chris Paul looked in Game 3, and particularly Game 4, where he had more fouls than points. So, Dwayne, what is wrong with Chris Paul?
Nothing wrong with Chris Paul. The Mavericks just played better defense. There's nothing wrong with Chris Paul. I mean, we saw in the first round when the Pelicans started headhunting Chris Paul played his 2 worst games of the series. Those were the 2 games that the Pelicans won. The only difference is the Mavericks have a superstar and the Pelicans don't. The Mavericks have a better coach. And I think as far as overall roster construction is concerned, the Mavericks are better constructed from top to bottom than the Pelicans, which means that it looks worse with Chris Paul to play this bad against this team. The Pelicans are better. The Mavs are better than the Pelicans. And there is more there was not at any point in the series a ounce of doubt that the Suns would get past the Pelicans. There was no doubt, even after they had won those 2 games. There was no doubt. There is doubt here because this is a better team with a better coach and a better overall roster construction. Chris Paul isn't. There's nothing wrong with Chris Paul. The matchups just didn't favor him in Game 3. They didn't favor him, especially in Game 4. I think in Game 4 he tried to overcompensate for his lackluster performance in Game 3, and that turned into him fouling out with like 8 minutes to go in the game, which is never okay. And I'm going to keep the energy I kept earlier. Like I said earlier in this playoff series or in this playoff season that Karl-Anthony Towns fouling out of the play-in game with 7 minutes left was unacceptable. It was unacceptable for Chris Paul to foul out with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of that basketball game. 100%, it was. He'll be fine. Like, he's still one of the greatest point guards we've ever seen. He's still been, aside from these 2 games, he's still been one of the best players in the postseason this season. That doesn't go away because he hasn't played his best basketball. Hopefully he'll be fine come Game 5 at home because, like I said, if they lose Game 5, they're not winning another game in this series. So we'll see.
Payton, is there something wrong with the point guard, or do we expect Game 5 to see Chris Paul return to his legendary status?
I expect Game 5, Chris Paul is going to be back to being Chris Paul. Game 3 and Game 4, like Marcus said, listen, the matchups just weren't great. They are much better defensively than the Pelicans are. I know the Pelicans are probably, I would say, overall better offensively than the Magic are, but defensively, they are definitely not. And it was tough for him in Game 3. And I expected him to bounce back in Game 4. Now, there was the situation going on with his family, which might have kind of reasonably so if it was going on during the game and he knew it was going on during the game, reasonably kind of made him a little bit flustered on the court. I would 100% understand if that played a factor in it. But at the end of the day, it hurt the Suns because Chris Paul he might not be their best player. I think Devin Booker is the best player on the Suns, but Chris Paul is like the Chris Middleton on the Bucks. He's the closer. Chris Paul is the guy with the ball in his hands at the end of the game that's going to put the game away. He did that plenty of times throughout the playoffs and plenty of times throughout the regular season, where in the fourth quarter and in the clutch moments, Chris Paul hits those shots. And when he's out of sorts, they're losing their closer, even if they're in a close game, even if the Suns are playing close, like they were fairly close with Dallas in Game 4, but their closer was gone. It's hard to close out the game without your closer. So Chris Paul needs to bounce back in Game 5 because I 100% agree with Marcus. If they lose in Game 5, it's done. If you go back to Phoenix and you lose in front of your home crowd to Dallas in Game 5, you're probably not winning Game 6.
I'll say this, right? It is not rare for Chris Paul to start games slowly. Like, what he does in this Phoenix Suns team particularly is that he lets everyone else get in the game. He plays facilitator, reference, Payton. When it comes to fourth quarter, then, that's when he takes over. And there's no stat that shows that more so than he led the league in fourth quarter plus minus and also fourth quarter clutch stats. That is, obviously when he's on the floor, the teams outscore your opponent more over the time that he's on the floor. And on top of that, the clutch rating, which is games that are tied or within 2 possessions within the last 5 minutes. Nobody is better in the NBA than Chris Paul. Obviously, if you're in foul trouble and then you foul out and can't play the fourth quarter, then you can't make up for the slow starts that you usually have. Because you see, he tried to get Devin Booker involved first and then DeAndre Ayton especially. Other than that stupid offensive foul, I hate to see point guards go in front of the defender and then slow up. And I know the NBA refs are calling that. His foul trouble was all, as you all mentioned, the Dallas Mavericks just targeting him. And part of my problem with Monty, and I think that they need to get back to this, the primary defender, whether it be Mikal Bridges, whether it be Jay Crowder, they need to start going under those screens. Now, I know there's a fear of Luka hitting those threes, but as Game 1 and Game 2 show the Suns, it is better off letting Luka score 40-plus points than Luka scoring 25 and getting everyone else involved. And I think part of the issue with them, Mikal Bridges trying to stay over the top of the screen, is that the closest defender tries to stay and help. And then when that one pass comes, all these guys, whether it be Bertans or Kleber or Dorian Finney-Smith, these guys are now waiting to shoot, and they have been shooting the ball extremely well. I think Phoenix's other defenders need to stay home, but that depends on Crowder and Bridges going under those screens, so as the other defenders don't feel the need to help, or having Aiden switch off and then Aiden getting exposed. I think Chris Paul is going to be just fine, because I would hate to think that Chris Paul is going to have 3 straight terrible games, and I don't see Chris Paul having a great game and then the Phoenix Suns still losing. Fingers, of course, crossed. We'll stay in the Western Conference and go to the other semifinal series. That would be the Golden State Warriors and the Memphis Grizzlies, who I believe have to play their Game 4 tonight, if I'm correct, tonight. So, Payton, the series has been most noted for right now the extremely physical play between the two teams, to the point where one player has been knocked out for the rest of the series, being Gary Payton. The other one is a question mark to play tonight.
He's not playing.
Nope, he's not playing. Out. That would be Ja Morant. So, Payton, what have you made of the physicality of this series?
I like it. I don't think that Dillon Brooks intended on hurting Gary Payton, and I don't think that Jordan Poole intended on hurting Ja Morant. Now, Dillon Brooks deserved to face that consequence for his actions because the other player got hurt, and the NBA needs to do that. They need to handle that situation in the way that they did. I think they handled it fine, the 1-game suspension and all that. But physical basketball is a good thing. Like, it's a good thing for the sport to be physical. It's a good thing for the players to be playing hard. Sure, it has its pluses and its minuses. If this was a regular season game, maybe I'd be like, okay, Dillon Brooks, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Jordan Poole, maybe you shouldn't have done that. But this is the playoffs. Everything is on the line. Every game matters. Every possession matters. Every shot matters. Everything matters exponentially more in the playoffs than it does in the regular season or in any other game. So with that being said, yeah, I think you should be more physical in the playoffs than you are in the regular season.
Same question, Dwayne. Do you like the physicality in the series?
I think it's to be expected. The Grizzlies have seemingly tapped back into that grit and grind style of play that found them success in the mid 2010s, so like 7 years ago. But I mean, the Warriors are not scared of anybody. Like, yeah, we call Steph the babyface assassin, but he's not scared of anybody. Like, Klay's not scared of anybody. These are two of the nicest guys you'd ever meet, but they're not scared of anybody. Like, we know Draymond Green's not scared of anybody. Like, I think this is one of those situations where the Grizzlies are just playing really rough. They're playing really physical. I think the one thing I wished is that there weren't so many whistles, because then it'd really be physical. Like, I don't think people need to be hurting each other every other play. Not that I'm saying that they are, but I think it seems a lot more physical than it is, because there's refs are going to blow the whistle every other second, primarily because they have one and they feel like they need to be heard. No, I love it. I think this is great. Whoever wins this series will have earned it because of all the physicality and all the injuries and all of that stuff that's been intertwined within the series. But not that, I mean, the Grizzlies are still going home at the end of the day. So, I mean, why not, I guess, leave a mark or make an impression? They say if you're going to go down, you got to go down swinging, and the Grizzlies are doing that. So,
no, I am obviously a fan of 90s basketball, but you're going to be shocked about what I'm about to say. Physicality, I just hate how this series started. And by that, I mean Draymond Green's foul on Brandon Clark. And the reason I hate it, I didn't mind the blow to the head. I thought the dragging him by the jersey to the ground was unnecessary and extremely dangerous. Like, he knew what he was doing. And, heat in the moment, whatever. And Draymond indeed did try to hold him from hitting the ground. So I don't think he tried to, hurt him or injure him. My problem with Draymond's actions is what he said afterwards. And I'm not going to go as far as to say he should shut up and play basketball. Like, we are long beyond that. That's nonsense. I just hated that he never apologized and said he's going to play basketball the way he was going to play basketball. I'm like, oh, Lord. And the reason I hated it is because then, obviously, in retaliation, we saw Dillon Brooks unfortunately injuring Gary Payton. And this is not to, not hold Dillon Brooks accountable for his actions, because I hate that play too. Like, that could have ended up way, way, way worse. I just wish with the physicality that these dangerous plays did not happen, because the reason I hate it, one, we had Dillon Brooks' suspension. Gary Payton is not going to be a part of these playoffs, probably. And then what's worse is now everything we're looking to see, is this a dirty play or is this not a dirty play? Because clearly Jordan Poole's, pulling at the knee, he was going after the ball. That was not a dirty play. But because of the two previous incidents, we are going to put everything under a microscope. And we are here to watch basketball. No one cares or, how hard did somebody foul this or that and the next. I'm here to watch basketball. As much as I think the league has become too soft, I don't like how the series started, because now everything is under a microscope. Now we're looking at everything. And to your point, Dwayne, now the whistle is going to blow and blow and blow and blow. And it really hit. Like, I was watching a game. Game 4, Dallas and Phoenix. The first half, that whistle was blowing so damn much. I'm not here to watch referees. I'm here to watch Luka Doncic. I'm here to watch Chris Paul. I'm here to watch Devin Booker. And that's why I hated Draymond Green's not only actions, but his subsequent words. Like, you're just inciting violence. Like, apologize for the hit. Say, yeah, I'm here to play basketball hard. But don't go saying I'm going to play how I'm going to play. Like, that was dangerous. Like, that Brandon Clark incident could have ended so much worse. Like, you could have pulled him to his neck. I hate the play. I love physical play, but to a point. Like, this Milwaukee-Boston series. No, this is physical basketball without the dangerous play. I absolutely love the series. And for those who are here currently watching the series and do not have a television at home, Milwaukee is currently leading the Celtics 61-56 with 8:24 left to go in the third quarter. Giannis is not playing well at all, but Bucks are still holding on to a 5-point lead. Guys, Dwayne, I'll start with you this time, though. Now that we know Ja Morant is not playing Game 4, do the Grizzlies still have a chance in this series?
They didn't have a chance in the series regardless. Ja Morant not playing obviously just stamps that because you can't win a basketball game without your best player. Well,
they won 20 of them this season.
I say that. Well, you can't win playoff basketball without your best player. But then I say that, and then the Jazz are an anomaly because the Jazz suck. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. You can't win playoff basketball without your best player. Look at the Sixers going down 2-0 to the Heat. They're not going to win this series. This is Steph and Klay and Drake. This is what they do. They play playoff basketball. The Minnesota, the Golden State Warriors with this big three, so to speak. I didn't mean to. It's fine. It's fine. We'll chalk that up as a massive L on my part. The Golden State Warriors in the Steph, Klay, Dre era have lost 2 playoff series in their career, in both finals series. This team doesn't lose. This is the closest. This is the closest thing to a guarantee in life, outside of death, taxes, and you, Justin, continuously to put Giannis on this pedestal that he doesn't deserve to be on. And also being a habitual pain in my side. The point of the fact of the matter is, no one plays better home playoff basketball than the Golden State Warriors. And I know that they're not in the Oracle Arena anymore, but this is still the Golden State Warriors at home in the playoffs. They're going to do just fine. It sucks for the Grizzlies because now they're definitely not making it out of the second round. I don't know why anybody had the Grizzlies coming out of the second round to begin with, because that's not a conference finalist basketball team. So it sucks. I feel bad for Ja because he's box office. A superstar /superstar in the making, whatever. But no, the Grizzlies didn't have a chance with Ja in this series. They definitely don't have a chance now.
Can they still find a way to get into the Western Conference Finals?
No, and this is why. Let me ask you this, Justin. You're a big Suns fan, right? You get to pick who the Suns get to play the next round in the Western Conference Finals, right? Memphis or Golden State? Who would the Suns? All right, exactly. There you go. That's why the Memphis Grizzlies have no chance, is because they're simply not the better team. Even when Ja Morant was on the floor, they're not the better team. They're not better than the Warriors. The Warriors handle business in the playoffs as per usual. And now that Ja Morant's out, it's the Warriors' time to just bury him and move on.
So I will try to make some cases or some, positive points for the Memphis Grizzlies here, play a little devil's advocate. During the regular season, they did go 20-5 without the then MVP candidate. They are better defensively when Ja Morant is off the floor, because he is indeed a small player and an easy target in pick and rolls. And, for bigger players, they can body him. They are a very deep team, evidenced by the fact they went 20-5 without Ja Morant this regular season. Desmond Bane is do a good game. Dylan Brooks is there, and I like Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark off the bench. Gives Golden State headaches on that offensive glass. I want to see they have one of the best backup point guards in the league. It is a deep, well-coached, great defensive team. I like this team. Problem is, as you all alluded to, they don't have the playoff experience that the Golden State Warriors do. In the Steve Kerr era, as Dwayne pointed out, they have lost 2 series all time, and all 2 happened to coincide in the finals. And quite frankly, Memphis is an extremely ill-disciplined team, and part of that is because they're young. I saw that in Minnesota, where they were given up very, very huge leads and had to come back. And I want to see 4 of those 6 games. And I said going into this series, they are not going to do that against Golden State Warriors and get away with it. No, they're without their best player, who has been, in my estimation, the best player in terms of production this entire series in Ja Morant. Now, you're missing him for at least 1 game. Yeah, they were not going. I didn't have them to win the series. I had Golden State in 6 with Ja. And as good as Memphis were without him, I just don't know that you can replicate that during the playoffs. So, guys, as said, Game 4 of the Boston-Milwaukee series is currently ongoing, Payton. This arguably is a matchup that we all want to see in the Eastern Conference. Who wins it and why?
Bucks, because of Giannis.
All right, we wrap up.
You have the best player in the world on your team.
Thank you for coming on. I am the Justin of this. Sorry, cutting.
you listen. You have 2 physical teams, 2 teams that play great defense. Right now, the Bucks are playing better defense. What's the kicker? One of them has the best player in the world on their team, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks. And that's why I say Milwaukee will hold on to win tonight, and they'll hold on to win the rest of the series. I know Marcus is mad about that. I know Marcus.
I'm not mad. I just feel like at some point we have to. I feel like at some point we have to. Number one, we have to stop moving the goalpost, and number 2, we have to be real here for a second. Like we Giannis. Okay, whatever. Best in the world. If you want to say that, you can say that. He's not, but it's fine. The Boston Celtics have 2. You can argue the 3 best players in this series. If you're going to go the 5 best players in this series, I think you can make a legitimate argument that the Celtics have 3 of those 5 guys, right? We'll get there. Just be patient, buddy. The Celtics have Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams. Their bench, the roster construction for the Boston Celtics, I think, is so much better and more reliable than the bench that the Bucks have. Like you're not getting the Bulls. The stuff we saw with the Bucks bench from against in that Bulls series is an anomaly because the Bulls suck. Let's be honest here for a second. We have to be real. And here's facts. The facts are that the Celtics are in this series specifically better than the Milwaukee Bucks, despite the fact that they're currently down 2-1 in the series and currently trailing by 6 or however many points they are in Game 4 right now. Like the Celtics are the better team. The Celtics haven't lost anything major that could alter the outcome of this series. Like, despite it is insane to me that for a year and a half now, Justin Marvel has sold me on this pipe dream that Chris Middleton was the reason why the Bucks won the chip last season. And Chris Middleton not being there just now means nothing all of a sudden for the Milwaukee Bucks as it pertains to getting past the Celtics and eventually getting back to the finals. The Celtics are going to win this series. And I don't know why we have to like sit here and really. Sometimes I feel like Justin brings you on the show for things like this to just make me sound stupid. But if you really think about it, like Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are a solid 1-2 punch, and them together can match whatever Giannis gives you, and those around Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown can do better as a collective than the collective of the Bucks. Like. The Celtics are going to go back home and they're going to win that game. And if they don't win this game, they'll win Game 7. The Celtics are going to win in 7 is the point that I'm trying to make here. And I feel like I think both of you guys are brilliant. I think you guys are very small. You, Payton, more so than Justin. I think you're very brilliant, Payton. And it's always a pleasure. Justin's a pain in my ass. But like, why are we doing this? Why are we? Is this just another instance where you can go on and on and on about Giannis? Is that what you're trying to? Okay, yep. That's fine. The Celtics are going to win in 7. I don't even know why. I do know. I think it's very immoral and inhumane for you to just throw in a segment here because your Suns are looking bad and you need something to talk about. So instead, you're going to talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo. Go ahead, just talk about Giannis. Do it.
I will. I am not here to disappoint. First, I'm going to say, like Payton said, not only is he the best player in the series for the last 4 years, Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player in the world.
Years, Giannis Antetokounmpo has been the best
And I'm
player in the
going to
world.
tell you why.
Justin.
Hold on. So I let you talk. For the last 4 seasons,
Wow.
please, I would like somebody to stop everyone's resume for the last 4 seasons. And in that last 4 seasons, Giannis Antetokounmpo has 2 regular season MVPs.
One of them he didn't deserve.
No, he has 2 regular season MVPs, a Finals MVP, a Defensive Player of the Year, and in that span, in that Finals MVP, he dropped a 50-piece to win to secure the title. Like, how many players?
Who did he drop that 50-piece on,
He
by the way?
dropped it on me, and I'm not ashamed to say it. That's how I know Giannis Antetokounmpo for the last 4 seasons has been the best player in the NBA. 2 Finals MVPs, 2 regular season MVPs, a Finals MVP, a Defensive Player of the Year, and a 50-piece in a Finals decider. It's a hard and tough resume that no one else currently has. On top of that, current MVP finalist, he didn't win, but kudos to Nikola Jokic, who I also picked as MVP this season. But that's beyond the point now. No, I do think that Chris Middleton not being there is a huge loss to the Bucks. And yet I still, before they started the series, picked the Bucks in 6. Right? Because first thing first, this is not Brooklyn Nets. This team can defend, as Boston Celtics are currently finding out. And this is a very, very big team. So if Boston's going to score, Boston's going to have to hit perimeter jump shots because you're down one not scoring it over Giannis, you're not scoring it over Brook Lopez, and Bobby Portis comes off the bench to provide some length. That is a tall team. And on top of that, Jrue Holiday is an extremely big player, 4-point guard, and he played a lot bigger than he really is. My main point why I thought that the Milwaukee Bucks are going to win tonight and, go on to win this in 6, I didn't think after, I want to say game 3, Jrue Holiday, Bobby Portis, and Grayson Allen, 3 very, very competent 3-point shooters, went 4 for 17 from behind the arc, and Milwaukee still found a way to win that game, albeit an extremely close one. I didn't think coming back here again at home in Pfizer Forum that the 3 of those will struggle from behind the arc. Like, you're asked that too much. Unfortunately, though, seems to be the case because Jrue is 1 of 4, Bobby is 0 of 1, and Grace Allen is 0 for 2 from behind the arc in this game. Like, didn't expect that to happen. I just think Milwaukee is just too long, too big for this Boston team. I don't think Boston matches up well with them. Boston is an extremely good defensive team, but when it comes to the opposite end, right, they do not move the ball a lot, and that's because none of their best 2 players are known or capable facilitators, and I mean that in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They look a lot better against Brooklyn in that regard. Like, Jayson Tatum was passing ball or at least racking up assist numbers, but it said that's fool's goal because Brooklyn had so many bad and small defenders, and they can name them for you in Kyrie Irving, in Patty Mills, Seth Curry, Goran Dragic, that they can target those players. And in targeting those players, they force double teams, and Jayson Tatum's passing was easy. Like, if you're doubling, you just hit the open man and hit shots. Milwaukee doesn't double because Milwaukee has a series of good defenders, and they are very, very big. So I knew those assist numbers would not come and rack up against Milwaukee. I like the construction of Boston's team to an extent. I just think that Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown have to become better passers for them really to threaten as a legit team. If the Boston Celtics didn't have to play anyone else in the Milwaukee Bucks, I could see them getting out of the East. But I think because Milwaukee's length, their great defense, I just thought that this was always going to be a matchup problem. And if Pat Connaughton and Grayson Allen are hitting threes, then I thought that the series was going to be a short one, even without Chris Middleton. Before we wrap up, guys, I'll just give you all a quick word to finish.
I just can't believe you sat here and tried to convince me and the lovely people watching at home that Giannis has been the best player in the world for 4 years running now. That's
Back-to-back
just
MVP.
insane. That's asinine. I really can't believe you. You said some crazy things. I cannot believe you. 4 years running now.
4 years. I told you.
That's
look at his resume
insane.
for the last 4 years.
It's insane. You can make a legitimate argument that one or both of the MVPs he won, he shouldn't have won. You can make a legitimate argument that you can make an argument that the defensive player of the year he won, he shouldn't have won. The only accolades that he has that you can't dispute are the championship and finals MVP that he won against your Phoenix Suns. That's the only thing that Giannis has that you can definitively say is undisputed. That's fine. Like, but you can make legitimate arguments that one or both of the, I'll say one, maybe not both. One of the MVPs he has, you can make a legitimate argument he shouldn't have. Similarly, you can make a legitimate argument that Nikola Jokic shouldn't have the MVP that he just won a couple hours ago. It's not far-fetched to say that the guy who won MVP wasn't the MVP. Like, that's not a crazy thing to say.
You have two of them, kind of hard to argue when you have back-to-back. Like, it's kind of really hard to say, oh, he didn't deserve MVP. Oh, well, they just won it again next year.
So you believe that? See, I don't even want to talk about this because this doesn't really have anything to do. Well, you said back-to-back MVPs, so now I'm going to, because I don't. It's not on the show flow, but I feel like I just need to address it really quickly. You honestly believe that Nikola Jokic should have been the MVP this season? The 13th MVP in the history of basketball is sitting at home right now.
He's not the first. Like,
he's not the first what?
He's not the first
back-to-back MVP to be sitting. No, I didn't say MVP. I said back-to-back MVP. He's sitting at home right now. He's not the first MVP to do it. That's fine, but MVPs aren't back-to-back MVP. There's a reason why they're back-to-back MVPs. And there's a reason only 13 guys have done it.
I think that's a problem with people who didn't want Nikola Jokic to win. They're part of the issue, right? People have to understand. You can't look at last season's MVP. Like, you have to forget, like, this is not an award for 2 years. He won the MVP last season, and this season you have to forget that he won the MVP and ask yourself who had the MVP caliber season. Like, you can't say, "Oh my God, he shouldn't win the MVP because he shouldn't have 2 straight MVPs." That's crazy. That's crazy. Like, you have to tell yourself.
Where in the Western Conference did the Nuggets fall this season?
They finished 6th.
Where they finished 6th. That's an MVP.
Will Barton was starting.
Pardon?
So, like the whole team was hurt.
That's what I'm saying.
That's not
okay.
Not Jokic's fault. That's the trainer's fault on the team.
When you are the best player on the team,
right?
Obviously you're going to post stats. I'm not denying that Nikola Jokic wasn't the best player on his team this season. That's crazy to say that. What I am saying though is that he wasn't the most valuable player on his team this season.
Well, hold on. I know you brought that, and I'm not even going to go to the advanced metrics, which all support Nikola Jokic winning.
Yeah, and I've outlined a couple weeks ago that advanced metrics mean nothing because Montrezl Harrell has a higher VORP than superstars in this league. So I don't want to hear anything about VORP or win shares or any of the other nonsense that the advanced metrics are going to tell you.
7 advanced metrics is different from 1 or 2. Like, if you're leading 6 or 7 advanced metrics, that should tell you something. And on top of that, which I did not know, Nikola Jokic is the first player to lead his team in points, rebounds, blocks, assists, and the field goal percentage. And we are seeing here that guy who did all of that, playing without his second best player, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. for more than half the year, leading them to a 1 win less than the guy who everyone else wants to win the MVP, and Joel Embiid is not the NBA MVP. And then what I find funny about people who support Embiid or Philadelphia fans in general, on one hand, they're going to say, oh, well, Joel Embiid didn't have any help because Harden wasn't there for half the season. And then on the other hand, they're going to quickly say, oh, but, Tyrese Maxey should have been most improved player and Tobias Harris is a fringe all-star. Which is it?
Well, I'm not making those arguments because you can't have both. And I agree with you. I'm not saying that Tyrese Maxey did play his butt off this season. He should have been the most improved player. I don't think Tobias Harris was a fringe all-star, though. That's for sure. I don't think that. But what I will tell you, though, is that it has been longer than I've been alive the last time a center led the league in scoring. And Joel Embiid did that. And the last guy to do that won the MVP that season. Like, we're very quick to throw around historical seasons, but then a guy has an historical season, and it, like, why? Was
Jokic's season not historical? Because it's been since all of us ever been alive on the planet.
No. I'm not saying that Jokic's season wasn't historical. Like,
I just gave it history. He's the first player to have led his team in all those categories. Like
that, and the 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, 500 assists mark.
And I'm not saying that Jokic had a bad season. I'm just saying he didn't have an MVP season relative to your guy Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, or Joel Embiid, or even your other guy, Devin Booker. Like, there are stronger cases that can be made for other guys to have been MVP this season than Nikola Jokic, and he's the 13th guy in the history of the sport to have done it twice in a row, and he's sitting at home.
And I see, again, that's a problem. Everyone says he's
well. That's a separate issue that I have. That's a separate issue that I have. Not from him being that is a separate issue. Right? You can't be that guy and be sitting at home. But that's different from why I don't think he was MVP. I agree with you there. Those are two different discussions. Too.
Well, guys, I have gone way past after actually meeting the time last week. Who knew? So I'll let you all wrap up, I'll let you all plug yourselves. Go right ahead, Payton.
Yeah, you could find me on Instagram at PD Sports. Same thing with TikTok as well. Twitter and Facebook, it's at Payton Dwell Show. I host my own show live. The other great live show in the sports world here on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So, yeah, make sure to check it out. It's live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
I chime in. I don't miss that. Dwayne Marcus, go right ahead. Tell the kind folks how.
That's also. Not that I want to have a pissing contest, but just because I haven't gone live in a while doesn't mean I don't have a fantastic live sports show myself. Let's not. No, but yeah, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at GTP Marcus. Go talk with Marcus on everything. Justin, unfortunately, is going to be on the show on Wednesday, talk about the Lions. Not because of the Lions, but because it's Justin. I had Steezy A. Smith on the show today to talk about the Jaguars. I did a WrestleMania Backlash preview yesterday. I know the pay-per-view is over, but you can still watch it because why not? Apparently, I didn't know this because I've been recording so many episodes over the last 2 weeks. Apparently, I'm closing in on episode 150, which should be at some point next week. So yeah, that's cool. The main grind is to get to 100 subscribers by the end of the month. I'm at 92 right now. I just need 8 more people to go press the subscribe button. It'd mean the world to me. Yeah.
Especially in time for his birthday. But folks, you know how to find us. Just in, please put in that hashtag. None of us want to go and watch Max Kellerman shows. We just don't want that. We want right here. So that's hashtag this just in. We are here on YouTube. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook and Twitter. Unfortunately, Marsh is not with us tonight, so we were not live on Twitter tonight. But yeah, every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, you can find us right here on YouTube. Please put the hashtag before this just in. And before we sign out, Milwaukee has a 9-point lead, 79-70. 133 left to go in the third quarter. Go Bucks, because this is indeed a Wisconsin-based show. We also have some big news for you guys, but I won't be the guy to break that. That's just I just won't steal that thunder. But stay tuned to all 3 of these channels. We do have huge news. I'll let Dwayne Marcus break that for you eventually. So stay tuned, and eventually when he does break it, we also release it. So for Payton Doyle and Dwayne Marcus, I am the Justin of hashtag this just in, signing out. Go watch Milwaukee beat down on these Boston Celtics and reach yet another NBA Finals. Good night, everyone.
I can't believe you.
I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Johnny Memphis, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. The God's with the kingdom out of here just the same. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
question. Search your soul and answer me this question. Do you think I have what it takes to be great, but still be humble and learn from my mistakes? Shit.